You can't fight that desire inside of you when it's like a little flame that gets fanned over and over and over again. And that is where I think purpose and passion built businesses that truly come from a place of solving a problem are the ones that can sustain. Heck, look at what we've been through in the last decade.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, hosted by Chrissy Van. Together, we're uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by Fitness World. Your fitness, your way. Visit fitnessworld.ca.
On today's episode, CEO of Live Well Exercise Clinic and President of the Fitness Industry Council of Canada, Sara Hodson, returns to the show. Sara is a powerhouse in business and fitness industry advocacy. Today, she opens up about how she took a bold career leap and will be sharing her top entrepreneurial hacks along the way. Plus, she'll share the latest buzz when it comes to fitness industry advocacy in Canada and how there can be a worldwide ripple effect. Before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. I'm your host, Chrissy Van, and this is ATFW.
That quite recently, I had the opportunity to travel to a Live Well exercise clinic. And of course, living in British Columbia, Canada, this is something that I pass on my travels quite frequently. But actually getting to go through the door, meet the people, see this idea come to life and in action was so incredibly inspiring because you had such a strong sense of community and also people that really understood that exercise is medicine. These shifts are for health. So Sara, before we find out how you brought all this to life, maybe explain to people what is Live Well Exercise Clinic.
We really have found this niche between, I would say, traditional fitness and active rehab or cardiac rehab or chronic disease management and prevention, and found a place for people to truly use exercise as medicine. I don't know a better way to say it, where they're in a setting where they feel safe and supervised. They have accountability because there's sessions, because, it's hard to sometimes show up for exercise. And they have that expert guidance through working with clinical exercise physiologists and kinesiologists to ensure that they are, if they're going to spend their time exercising, they're progressing. Really, that's what we built into Live Well Exercise Clinic. And it's not a drop-in gym. It's not even a service. It truly is a program that people are part of and that they come regularly because they're part of a program. They're part of a community. And that's truly what drives their success.
For those that walk in your door, do you happen to know roughly how many people had really been incorporating exercise in their lives before? Or generally, is this kind of a first step, often coming a little bit later in life?
I think definitely Live Well's specialty is taking people from no fit to low fit and beyond. But most of our members are able to share stories of how they know they need to be more active, but there's been obstacles, there's been fears, there's been life got in the way. For many people, it's just that, they're now kind of empty nesters or their kids have gone off to university and there's the opportunity for them to focus on themselves when they haven't focused on themselves for some time. There's definitely also a group of people who, feel that regularly walking and leisurely walking has been enough until they are told, hey, this is going on. And they start to think, hey, maybe the walking that I'm doing isn't enough. Or people who attend aquatic type exercises. So they're like, oh, I go to the pool a couple times a week, but ultimately living on the land requires different training modalities, and the pool is great as aquatic therapy, but we really have to make sure that we are training our bodies in a way that is going to produce outcomes. And that is what our members are looking for, not outcomes like look really good in our bikini, but outcomes like lower my blood pressure. And their measure of success is that they can do the things that are meaningful to them in their life. They can do what they want, when they want, and to feel great doing it.
Well, and one of the things that I appreciate so much is that through you taking a big leap in life, which we will get to here, you've actually ended up at this forefront and a trailblazer for where I feel a lot in the fitness industry are trying to go at this phase. There's this big shift, as you mentioned, that for a lot of gym goers, they're recognizing, or soon to be gym goers are recognizing, that this is a key component when it comes to preventative healthcare. And we're trying to make that shift of just addressing these chronic disease issues with sick care and giving people a pathway that is lifelong and enhancing lifespan. And it's no surprise that you've ended up such an expert in this field. Tell me a little bit about where your career journey began.
To go way back, I actually worked at my university fitness gym and was excited to train the football players and teach spinning classes and to do, boot camps and all that type of stuff. And my boss came to me one day and actually said, all of you now are going to spend half of your shifts in a seniors fitness program. We all thought this is going to be the most boring thing we've ever done. And we really liked, the sexy job of working in the university gym. And she said, it's a non-negotiable. You're all going to spend half of your shifts there. And about 6 months later, I went to her and I said, I want to make a change to my schedule. And she said, Sarah, I told everybody it's non-negotiable. I said, no, I want to spend 100% of my shifts in the seniors fitness program. And I had really learned that, yeah, for the athletes, they wanted to win the next game and win the next championship. But at the end of that, it was hollow. And I saw these seniors coming to exercise, them being able to say that now they could take their dog for a walk again, or now they could play with their grandkids, or they could hold their grandchild and feel confident in that because they now had the strength to do it. And I'm not talking about frail older adults even. I'm talking about just your regular day older aged adult who may struggle to get up and down off of the floor, right? Exercise truly was proving to be a really, really meaningful thing in order to help them live the most meaningful elements of life. This wasn't about winning games. This was about what are we hoping to gain out of our life? And when our physical health makes that an obstacle, exercise is the only way to be able to get through that so that truly people can live life to the fullest.
That must have been such a rewarding shift too, because I find as well the stories that you get, the life experience that you get, the lessons that you probably got from those that you were training. No wonder it resonated. So you decided to really niche into that pathway. And I know the avenue started to go more healthcare. So what did that look like?
Yeah. So then when I graduated from university, I started to look at the opportunities that were available. And so I applied for a job in cardiac rehab. And I realized very quickly that I needed to bring up my knowledge base in order to work with heart patients. So people after a heart attack, stents, you name it. So I brought up my skills and I became qualified as an American College of Sports Medicine certified clinical exercise physiologist.
What a mouthful.
I know, right? It took me about 18 months to get there after I graduated, just with the course content and examination process and so forth. And then I worked in cardiac rehab and I worked there for the next decade for Fraser Health. And it was really that experience. I believed that this was going to be a place that I had a safe union job. I had benefits. I had pension. I had everything that most people are aiming to get to in their profession. And, I had this within 2 years of graduating and I believed in the work that we were doing. But as time went on, I saw that there was a better way. I saw that we could make more of an impact. I saw that our patients needed customized exercise programming. I heard from our patients that they wished that they had had something like this before their heart attack. I heard from our patients that they wanted their wife to come who had pre-diabetes or diabetes, that they wanted their neighbor, colleague, friend, family member to also come to this type of exercise because it was healthcare driven. It was safe and supported. It was a community of people who were there specifically to improve their health. And so they didn't have to feel like, what am I supposed to wear? What am I supposed to look like? What am I supposed to do? They were guided through everything. And that their exercise was progressed in a way that it did make meaningful health outcomes for them. And so you can only hear this so much over the course of a decade and not take action, right? And so that's really where I was actually on maternity leave with my fourth child. And
So a little busy.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And so I kind of said to myself, this was a fork in the road for me. This was I truly going to go back and continue in the work that, yes, I loved, but I was frustrated that we were not being more proactive and not providing this to more people. Or I could go a completely different path in my career. But my heart really told me that the work that we were doing was incredibly meaningful. And I knew there was a better way. So I took the time that I was on maternity leave, and I opened our first Live Well and developed the program and got it off of the ground so that by the time I was supposed to return after maternity leave, I was able to walk away from my safe union job, from my incredible benefits, from my vacation and sick day packages. And I, in fact, cashed in my pension and let my business take off.
Such an incredible feat too, because it's easy to say I was on my maternity leave. And I think that anyone that has forayed into those first few months with new baby, it's hectic. It is hectic. So the fact that you were able to get all this together so that you were ready to take action and jump on this opportunity, because as you said, yes, how often could you hear it in a decade and not take action? Truthfully, it would have been very easy to not take action. I mean, when you have that cocoon of safety, everything in us, generally, the fear that you would have had to actually push through, I don't want to discount that, because I can imagine a lot of conversations with yourself and that inner narrator that we all have was probably a fascinating one to move through, right?
You can't fight that desire inside of you when it's like a little flame that gets fanned over and over and over again. And that is where I think purpose and passion built businesses that truly come from a place of solving a problem are the ones that can sustain. Heck, look at what we've been through in the last decade. Started my business 12 years ago, and without a purpose-driven business, I wouldn't be sitting here today on the other side of a pandemic.
Yeah, completely fair comment, because this industry in particular had so many hoops to go through. Now, you've finished your mat leave, you've started this new business. How did you make all the connections, first of all, to really build in a strong referral within our healthcare system? Because I understand you decided to maintain those relationships, and smartly so.
I'll often say I had no business plan, no business experience, no business degree. I had no business being in business. But I had a heart and an idea that I believed was incredibly important to bring to as many people as I could possibly reach. And now my career in cardiac rehab was that family doctors sent their patients to exercise in cardiac rehab. I didn't know of another way. I, in fact, hadn't worked in what I would call the fitness industry since I was in university. And so for me, it was, well, how am I going to build my program? It's that doctors who are the main caregivers of their patients' health and how they're being treated and managed for their risk or chronic or known chronic disease, that these doctors are going to guide them, which is where they guided them to cardiac rehab. So of course that's going to be the exact same thing for Live Well. So that is truly how I grew my business out of the gates, was continuing to have that trust from family doctors and having them send their patients to us. And, then you treat them well and you see the results, and those patients go back to their doctor and, have positive feedback, and the snowball effect starts to happen.
Well, I shared this story with you when I saw you briefly, but the thing that I appreciated so much, even in my personal life, I remember my grandfather, there was a program that he ended up in after a heart attack, and everything that you relayed was 100% how he felt. Where was this before I had to go through this to land here? But once he was doing the exercise programs, it quite literally changed his entire life, and it changed this person's life within their most wonderful golden years. From 70 to 82, he went every single week. They would meet up for coffee thereafter. It brought back the spark and vitality to this person. He had, every time we get together, he would be telling me about the new friends that he met there. He would talk about his flexibility. He was 6'1" and shrinking, but he was like, I can bend over and touch my toes. And those are the memories that I have because of programs like this. And I think it's just so important too, because I find, especially in Western society, we tend to discount the elderly or senior citizens in such a big way. I think we just have such a singular way of living as a whole. Whereas you look at other cultures, people take care of their elders and generally they contribute strongly to society. I know, for example, in blue zones in the world, it's the reason why they have so much vitality is because they play an important role in society. And so giving people community can't be discounted. I mean, you brought up the pandemic. Loneliness, we know, was such a killer as well. So on top of all these health outcomes, you're also changing lives in this big social way. And social it did become, because I know the roots were in White Rock, but you ended up with the best business problem anyone could have. You had to grow. So how does this come about?
Yeah. So having the first clinic in White Rock, which is about 45 minutes to an hour south of Vancouver, it all of a sudden people started showing up and they were driving 2 or 3 times a week from Vancouver. They were making that drive. And I thought, well, this is incredible. Why would they do that? There must be things in Vancouver that they can go to. And then through further research, noticing there isn't actually anything for people to go to. Again, I thought I can't have now this larger group of people commuting 2-3 times a week. If those people are coming from Vancouver, we should open in Vancouver. So that's what we did. We opened our second location in Kerrisdale. That was a year after we had opened our first location. And then while we were building out Kerrisdale and filling that with members, our original location became completely full with a wait list. And one of the things I had always said to myself was I do not want to have a wait list, because when I worked in cardiac rehab, our wait to get into the cardiac rehab program was 6 to 9 months. And, people's health would really fail them in that time. And the amount of help we could have given them in that 6 to 9 months was incredible, but was a missed opportunity. So I vowed to myself I would never have a wait list. So then we had to come back to the White Rock South Surrey community and open a second clinic. We opened that clinic with 90 people on our wait list. It was something that just was really, really taking off and building.
Such an exciting thing when you have this business idea, and that is the problem that you have. But you started it off saying, I had no business being in business. So I'm curious, what were some of the biggest entrepreneurial lessons that you learned? Because not only were you bringing a business to life, but because of excellent circumstances, you were bringing something to market that was necessary and people wanted, but it also could be difficult when you realize, oh, I've got to grow fast, which means I've got to learn fast.
I think that I learned quickly that I did, in fact, have business skills and that I did have business being in business. And I think it's that openness to know what you don't know and to learn it. And I do have a personality that is tenacious and that is risk-taking, and I am willing to go out on a limb, and you need those things to be an entrepreneur. But I also did have those skills of, building systems and building product and understanding marketing, and all of those things really came together for me in helping me to build a successful business. But I think that it was also because I came into this with no ego and no expectation and no knowledge of what I needed to do. One of my biggest pathways that I had to take myself down was mentorship and was reaching out to people who did know how to do things, not necessarily in the same industry as me, but people who knew how to market really well. People knew how to do strategic planning. I had never done strategic planning before. Who needs a plan? You just keep going, right? Reaching out to people who could help to lead and teach me and mentor me. And I think that is truly how I built maybe street credit, right? I didn't have any business courses or training, but I have street credit. And so that, I think the grit that it takes to get through things when things can get really scary and, you take on huge financial responsibilities. And I was signing leases that were I would lose my home. I would lose everything if I couldn't make those payments. Was everything short of taking your firstborn child? Are these agreements that you're signing? So you're taking incredible risks. But I believed in Live Well. I believed in the product. I believed in what we were bringing to communities. And I slowly learned that I had to believe in myself.
Which sometimes can be the hardest, but I think you
It
bring up
is.
such a good point about humbling any ego in ourselves when you're able to go in and honestly say, I don't know, and then seek out. And it's incredible when you do seek out how willing people are to share. And then for yourself, you've gotten to this big realm of success. And I know that you would be willing to do that for somebody else in your shoes. It really does pay it forward. And it seems so simple, but that first speaking out for I need help, especially in today's society, I think sometimes we can be so disillusioned in the land of social media that everyone's just doing everything on their own. And so then you feel like you have to do it on your own, or if you don't, that for some reason that's some type of failure, where we've got to scrap that because there's so much that happens behind the scenes. And just like you're building community in gym walls, it's building that community for yourself to make sure that you do have the support when times are tough. And sometimes to hear the things that we don't necessarily want to hear, because that's honest advice is also so valuable. So you end up growing so greatly, and then you decide, I need to franchise. So how did you decide that that was the route that you wanted to go, and what did that look like?
Yeah. So again, just really in kind of being able to have those mentors in my life who were able to direct and to be able to say, okay, well, you could corporately expand, you could expand as a franchise. For me, expanding as a franchise was meaningful because first of all, I really wanted to create a pathway for people with a kinesiology degree. Oftentimes, people with a kinesiology degree, they see it as a conduit or a way to get into postgraduate programs, or kinesiologists go and work in physiotherapy clinics and so forth. But, you look at the profession of physiotherapy, and physiotherapists can work in a clinic, they can run a clinic, they can own a clinic, they can own 10 clinics. And this is a typical way that physiotherapists have professional opportunities. But kinesiologists were kind of looked at as subpar. And I wanted to create an opportunity for a kinesiologist to work in a clinic, to then be able to manage a clinic, to be able to own a clinic. And if they want to own 10, 20 clinics, they can do that also. But that there's a program at the core of it, because truly with kinesiology, you need to ensure that you have programming in order to see people and make it as cost effective as possible so that you can get those regular visits with your customer. And that's what we created at Live Well.
You were, as I say, at this forefront of getting that message out that exercise is medicine and as this preventative healthcare tool. So the Fitness Industry Council of Canada, obviously you have been president of that for several years now. And the whole point is to move forward and try to get policy through from a government perspective that we know will help accelerate the message that fitness and exercise is medicine, get more people going from no fit to low fit. We have simple yet complex tax line issues on this side of the border. So tell me a little bit about, firstly, how you got connected with the Fitness Industry Council of Canada and really decided that this was something that you wanted to pursue.
I was introduced to the Fitness Industry Council by my co-provincial lead, Carl Ulmer of Club 16. And him and I had known each other since high school. When things started to happen with the pandemic, none of us knew what to do. So we started to reach out to each other. And that was my introduction to the Fitness Industry Council of Canada. And I knew how pertinent it was for us to speak to the leaders of our provinces at that time, who were the provincial health officers. They were the faces that we saw on a daily basis, right? We needed to speak their language. We needed to speak health language. We need to speak clinical language. We needed to use data and evidence to drive our agenda forward. This wasn't about keeping businesses open and being irresponsible with that. This was about truly public health, and how are we driving public health, and how can we use the data that exercise is medicine and that we can't keep people away from that medicine. And that was really my introduction to the Fitness Industry Council of Canada. And because of the pandemic, really as positioning ourselves as a healthcare solution, as the entire fitness industry, became a really important item on our agenda. And I think that, this is us fighting for all Canadians. This isn't us just fighting for fitness businesses. Fitness businesses are the tool and the place that people can come to so that we can facilitate that wellness. But ultimately, we need it to be available for all Canadians, and we need Canada to really take this seriously, that our physical wellness, our physical fitness, our mental health, they are all founded on our dose of physical activity. And until we take that dose of medicine seriously, our healthcare crisis will continue to implode. And we have only seen it get worse. We have not seen it get better. And really, until we have provincial and federal support, financial support, even just verbal support of we stand behind and we believe in this, until we have that, we are a country that is just getting further and further behind. And, as the World Health Organization stated last year, we need public policy around physical activity. And it's disappointing that as Canada, we do not have that. We are not willing to stand up for that. And as the Fitness Industry Council of Canada, we are challenging and holding our politicians to task to say, this is a requirement. This is what we have to do. And we need to be more active as a country. And it is one of the number one things that can help to truly solve this healthcare crisis that we're in. And that means making some changes. And the good news is that those changes aren't complex. Those changes aren't overly significant. And those changes save us money. So this is a no-brainer. Yes.
I mean, I want to talk about what the FIC is working toward currently, but before we get there, I also want to celebrate some of the wins, because obviously, this podcast, the beauty of these types of mediums, we get listeners from all over, and I've worked a lot in the United States with IRSA that's been doing a lot of work on Capitol Hill. The FIT Act is something that we speak about very commonly, but one thing that I know is that IRSA has looked toward Canada as kind of like, whoa, what are they doing over there? Because we've actually had some solid wins thanks to the FIC. So explain a little bit about some of those things that you brought to action that have really set an example for other countries to look at what is possible.
Yeah. So, some of the way that we were able to manage our way through the pandemic, we did have strong relationships in some, not all provinces, but we were able to build some strong relationships in provinces and keep gyms open and accessible to Canadians on as many possible days as we could. And that was through coming together and actually delivering data of what we called healthy check-ins versus COVID cases. And so that was a huge thing that we actually were all tracking our data as fitness operators. We were sharing that data, compiling that data, and then comparing that data to COVID cases where, people were saying, oh, well, I got COVID from going to the gym. And, they could say, okay, well, we had, 60 people report to us that they got COVID and that it came from the gym, but we're able to show how many millions of check-ins we had at fitness facilities, and to show that the percentage there of transmission risk was actually extremely low. In fact, at one point it was equal to hunting. So you were to go outside and hunt, or you were to go to a fitness facility, and your rate of transmission was the same.
That sounds like a really Canadian comparison too. I appreciate that.
Right. Yeah. It was exactly.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So that was a huge win for us, was truly leading from an evidence-based and relationship building standpoint, and not an us against them mentality. Other thing that we had was coming out of the pandemic closures and restrictions. The province of Saskatchewan decided, this would be a great time for us to add a tax to sporting events, arts and culture events, rodeos, and to gyms, and to tax people who go to those events that they were including fitness in.
Rodeos and to gyms. Let that marinate for a second.
Yeah, exactly right. And so we decided to go full force on fighting this tax, not just for the people of Saskatchewan, but for every single person in Canada, because the moment that it passes in one province, it starts to become, therefore, more acceptable to pass in other provinces. Ironically, the province of Saskatchewan was looking at this tax in order to offset healthcare costs.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
it was just so absurd to consider that people were actually thinking this way. So we, along with our local fitness industry council members who operate fitness facilities in Saskatchewan, we, presented at question period in the legislature. We went on a letter writing campaign. We got together with different groups and lobbying groups in order to ensure that our voice was heard. We wrote opinion pieces to, national publications and to local publications. We made sure that we attacked this from all edges, from getting public opinion, from political opinion, from a PR position. We did all of it, and we were successful. And fitness was the only item out of everything on the list that was excluded from the tax. And it was a huge win for the fitness businesses in Saskatchewan, but it was a huge win for Canada, because it shows that we shut that down, and that we may be small, but we are mighty, we are strong, and we have a big voice, and we insist on being heard.
Well, and I wanted you to share that story because it exemplifies exactly that. There is so much power in the unity that's happening in an industry that has been notoriously competitive, and obviously competition, that is how businesses thrive. But I think out of the pandemic, everyone realizes there is some pie for everybody, because we actually have a massive percent of the population that isn't moving at all. How do we speak to them? What policies do we need to change to help incentivize that? So on that note, you've given evidence that there is power in bringing the voices together and change can be created. What is the FIC working towards right now as we look ahead? At time of recording, it's hard to believe, but the holiday lights are going up all over the place. We're heading into 2024 very soon. So what's the vision as we move forward?
We continue to lobby for a change to line 33099 on our personal taxes, which is the medical expense category, which has pages and pages of medical expenses, from vitamins to tensors to you name it, that can be listed on our personal taxes as a medical cost. And we believe that exercise is medicine. We know that exercise is medicine. The evidence has proven that exercise is medicine. And what I share with our politicians is, in this country, we fund the research to prove that exercise is medicine. And then we fund the education to teach that exercise is medicine. But we do not fund for Canadians to benefit from exercise as medicine. How absurd is that? And so we truly need to put our money where our mouth is. If we're saying that we're going to prove it and we're going to teach it, we got to do it, right? So right now, athletic fees and memberships, athletic club fees and memberships, or something, I think is the exact line item, is listed as a non-eligible medical expense. And again, when we look at how much exercise benefits our health, not just kind of globally benefiting ourselves, like, oh, I feel better and I'm doing better and I look better, but I am actually talking about managing our mental health, managing our blood pressure, managing our diabetes, our bone health, our joint health, all of those components. This is a cost-saving endeavor for our federal government. And there's no programs, there's no special teams they have to put together, there's no special policies, nothing. It's already there. Line 33099 exists. All they have to do is change it from ineligible to eligible. And that is our call to the federal government.
And what would your message be to other health club operators that maybe haven't put their voice behind this yet? I know for a lot of, especially small business owners, they might be thinking, I am so swamped as it is. We're all coming out of the other side of the last couple of years. So what would be your overarching message to them?
I think first and foremost is, I think that it's our obligation as fitness business owners to come together and to be part of our association. And yes, I'm the president of our association. It is a volunteer position. I have no upside in preaching this. We need to come together and be one voice that's heard. We are a segregated industry, and we have so many single operating units that may feel like, well, what's the point in me being part of this? It's all the big companies that are part of this. And that couldn't be further from the truth. if we do not have every individual, if we do not have every yoga, spin, CrossFit, general gym joining that are singly operated, that is where our strength comes from. So first and foremost, it's be part of the association and the group of people who are lobbying, who are building policies to protect our business, who are promoting our businesses to the federal and the provincial governments, who are creating partnerships that I believe is going to move the needle on the fitness industry in Canada. Be part of that association. That I think is the first stepping stone. And once you're part of that association, you start to learn about all of the ways that you can contribute to the greater good of us moving this forward. But first, it takes building the army, and you can't fight for the cause of the army without willing to be part of it. And we are still building our army, but I will say that the feedback that we've had from politicians is they are seeing us and they are hearing us. And we are a small industry in comparison to hospitality and restaurants and travel and tourism and all of that. But we have been heard equally as much as those other groups have. And so we have to keep building on that momentum. And so if you're a fitness business owner and you're watching this, be part of this. Don't sit on the sidelines and watch. Be part of this.
Well, and I think it's them being cognizant of the potential ripple effect as well. I just did an interview. The Fitness Forecast is going to be coming out in the coming weeks. And Mark Mastroff sat down with me. And one of the things that he said, because obviously he was speaking a little bit more from the US perspective, and we talked about some of the advocacy work that was happening with URSA. And his whole point was getting something passed like the Fit Act in the States. There's a lot of challenges there, and they've been working on that for decades upon decades. He's like, but what if you take a lens out and a country like Canada, or we know that there's global initiatives happening on this front. It takes one of us to get it over the fence. And what happens, especially when you look from the American perspective, they if they haven't come up with it first, they sure want to follow. And so I think it just takes the industry coming together. You know, I really believe in what we have happening in Canada right now. And it's like this step, should we get it over the hill? It could have a complete ripple effect globally, getting more people on a global scale to move, because we can see these policy changes happening as a ripple effect. And truthfully, it is scary what we have on our hands. And I know that there's so much happening in the world. There's a ton of negativity at the moment, of course, and things are heavy, absolutely heavy. But truthfully, none of us will be able to show up our best through it if we are not moving. And the reality is, what is it, 84% of the population not hitting the mark? That's a very scary statistic. And I don't know what age you are if you are listening, but I think it's important to know that if we are so lucky, we're also going to be able to age through the decades if we are gifted that time. And if people don't take care of themselves now, there goes your health span. It's not about lifespan. It's about health span, because what's the point if you get that lifespan and you actually can't enjoy it? And you, Sarah, have witnessed the people that, you know, can't sit down with their grandkids, or can you imagine not being able to hold the grandbaby, or you can no longer go down to the store. And that's so limiting, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
But I'm so just impressed with your story. I always love people that aren't afraid to take a big leap. And I'm very appreciative of what you are doing on behalf of the industry. And I'm sure your message will resonate to many, because everyone's making those resolutions this time of year. Perhaps if you're a health club operator, this is one of them, to use your voice and get behind it. I always like to leave on a note that's going to inspire people. And I'm curious, because you've had such an entrepreneurial journey, you mentioned that you had a lot of mentors. So what lesson from them did you take that impacted you the most? Or what was something that was shared with you that really impacted you the most, that stuck with you to this day as you continue to grow and evolve?
You know, it's interesting because I leaned on mentorship to fill the gaps of the areas that I felt inadequate, that I didn't know. You know, do I have any business doing marketing? I don't have a marketing degree or marketing experience. But I think that what I was taught so well is that to also know what you do know, and to be confident with that, and to lean into that, and to not buy into a story that other people constantly can come in and that they're going to save you and fill this gap. And you really have to have that confidence. And especially as women, we struggle to kind of really lean into that. And we have that imposter syndrome of, what if they're going to just find out it's just me running this business and I don't really know much. But in fact, I knew a lot more than I thought I did. And to this day, I'm leaning on those strengths of I have far more knowledge than I was aware of. That truly moving forward will be the biggest success of my business.
Well, thank you so much, Sara. I really appreciate your time. And if you haven't checked it out already, it is on our YouTube page. You can see our tour of Live Well Exercise Clinic. We had a chance to meet some of your members on the tour as well. And they had some really inspiring, heartfelt messages, along with getting a look at what you do behind the scenes, which really is empowering people to live their lives so very fully. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Chrissy Van. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.